Hello, everyone. Welcome to Level 7. This is the Agents of Fandom podcast. I've missed you all. I feel like it's been too long. We have been launching a brand new podcast that we are excited to give you a little taste of in the all new Agents of Fandom podcast network. But before we get to that, I'm your host, TJ Zwarich. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Garrett. Garrett, how you doing?
I'm doing good. It's good to be back and talking with my friend and friends and about things that we all love. So it's a good day.
It is a good day, and we got a lot planned for today's podcast. Of course, we are going to be reviewing Ms. Marvel Episode 4, like we always do. Apologies, this one's coming a little bit late, but we also have another big day because it is time for the Thor Love and Thunder primer. This is hitting your podcast feeds July 4th, Monday, and it's this week that Thor Love and Thunder hits theaters. And so as a guest, of course, for our primers, we bring in our comic book expert, Agent Damon underscore Agent. How's it going, buddy?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk Thor. I will be full on and say Thor is not one of my stronger characters for backgrounds. I have read the Mighty Thor run, but going back and of course I read the Thor run with Gore, but like going back and just kind of like refreshing myself. This was a good like week to kind of like refresh myself with this, you know?
Good.
Perfect. You'll love to hear it. And, you know, being away for so long also made me want to get in the giveaway spirit. Get our groups involved. I'm firing out a bunch of comics in the mail now from our last live stream show, but I figured it's time to fire up a new one as well. So we got a first look at a new character that's coming to the MCU right away, and that is Namor, who's going to be in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. And so I figured it's time. Why not fire out a little Namor Funko Pop giveaway? So stay tuned to the Agents of Fandom socials. That's at Agents Fandom on Twitter, Agents of Fandom everywhere else, and you'll be able to find the details to get into this giveaway. And like I said, we're launching another podcast, and that's what we've been busy. That's one of the reasons we've been away. Also, it was my birthday a couple days ago, so I didn't want to record a podcast on my birthday. Come on. And we gave it a couple days, but
Give the guy a break.
we needed a little pause. And we're launching another podcast with one of our former guests and now fellow agents, Lee Swift, from season 2 of The Circle Netflix. You may remember him as River. And the podcast is called Ticket to Reality. We're going to talk all reality TV, pop cultures, with various guests from reality TV shows like The Circle, Survivor, Big Brother, Squid Game. We got all kinds of stuff coming up. It's very exciting. And first 3 episodes launched today, July 4th. So make sure you check out the Ticket to Reality podcast anywhere you get your podcast. Subscribe, leave a 5-star review rating, write a nice review on Apple Podcasts. You can write a question, and you'll get your question answered on air by Lee himself from season 2 of The Circle. So you head over and do that for the Agents of Fandom as well. It's same stuff. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button. Make sure you just subscribe. Now let's get into it. Garrett, you haven't seen Thor Love and Thunder yet, but you met up with a good friend of ours who is on his way to the premiere. What was it like seeing with Rich? And did you get to talk about him in person when he saw it, or did you see him before he saw it?
I saw him after he saw it, so I did get to discuss it with him a little bit. Obviously, we didn't delve too in depth into things because I didn't want him to, say anything that he wasn't allowed to say. And of course, I didn't want to hear anything that goes on to a certain degree. So we kept it fairly preliminary in our talks, but yeah, he was very excited about it, and his excitement got me more excited about it, which Thor is my guy. So I was already incredibly excited for Thor 4, more Thor, and all my colleagues that have seen it have only hyped it up more for me. They say a lot about the music, and I've really recently been getting in way more into like how music is used in films, and so I heard some exciting things about that I can't wait to see, and I'm very excited for Christian Bale as Gore, and I've heard some great things about what he's done. So I'm very much looking forward to this.
Heck yes, and we've been talking about this for a long time. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what months ago you called this your most anticipated film of 2022? Of 2022? Did you not?
So I originally had said it was going to be Multiverse of Madness because at the time when we were talking about this, there was like 50 rumors going around about all these cameos and who was going to be in it. It was obviously before the Illuminati stuff and whatnot. So there was a lot riding on that movie, and I had placed it before Thor, but I had said at the time that it was really, really painful for me because my heart wanted Thor the most. So it's depending on how you remember it.
Fair. I trust your heart, and I feel like I know you well enough that deep down I knew you were the most excited for it. So
Yeah.
that's probably why I can't wait. All the promotional stuff has just gotten me more and more excited for this film. I have had one thing accidentally spoiled that popped up on my social media page. From it was one of the post credits. It feels weird, but it also feels exciting, and I'm excited to talk about it and or see it. I wish I wouldn't have got it spoiled, so it would have been more of a surprise. But I'm still very excited about the conversation after we get to see this film. Now, Damon, even though this is one of your lesser expert opinioned characters, that's not the right terminology, but I still like it. It kind of worked.
It's your show. What are they going to do about it?
Exactly. Who, there's no grammar police here that are going to
there's
get
no
mad.
rules.
There's no SEO
If there was
readability that I
rules,
have to
we
hit
would
on the
have.
podcast.
Yeah, if there was rules, we would have been done a long time ago.
You've seen my spelling, man. It's bad.
That's true. This is why we get Damon on the podcast as opposed to on the website. But it's still early. We'll see. We'll get him. We'll get him there with some heavy editing. Enough making fun of Damon. Back to bringing him up. If you ever talk to Damon on social media, of course, it's at Damon Tweet on Twitter. Ask him about his love for mayonnaise. He's a big fan. He likes to put them especially on his hot dogs. Now, Damon, I want to know, what are the Thor books, both the Mighty Thor and Thor, that people can read to get them excited for this film?
I'm going to disappoint you now. There's no mayonnaise in any of these books.
You're disappointing yourself more than us.
I really am. My goodness. So let's start with the one that's the most important. Because there's a certain villain in this movie that we're all very excited to see. And if you go to your local comic shop right now, there's a collection of books that is the Thor 2012 by Jason Aaron, art by Asadrovich. That is collections 1 through 11. And that is the saga of Gore the God Butcher. Now, I don't want to get too much into his story because there's probably a lot of things that they're going to take in, and I don't want to spoil kind of like the thing that makes Gore interesting, that makes him relatable, that makes him like a compassionate character, someone that you can feel for, right? You shouldn't be feeling for a God Butcher, but they'll find a way. And Taika Waititi will probably take this angle and really run with it. So I'm not going to spoil that, but just so you know, he's not just a heartless alien demon with tentacles for heads.
Interesting. I can't wait to see.
Yeah, this story is weird. It's a weird story. Because for me, the one thing I don't love in stories is like time travel. And there's like some time travel in this story. There's like 3 different Thors. They come together and like you're bouncing around all over the place. Like one page, it's like future Thor.
Let me stop
you. Page, past Thor.
Are you saying there's a possibility
I
Jonathan
hope not.
Majors is in this
I
story?
really, truly hope not, because it's weird. It's weird. I don't like time travel. There's a line in there from Thor that literally says, I hate time travel. It's my least favorite thing. And I'm reading this. I'm like, yeah, Thor, I agree. Why are we doing this?
Well, who knows?
Yeah.
Hopefully they leave that aspect out.
So essentially how it works is, Thor's living out his life, right? Thor's living out his life. Oh, there's a dead god on a beach. That's not good. Huh, man, the only time I've seen a dead god is since, this thing that happened a long time ago, which is how past Thor gets involved, because it gets a little into the boy who lived type of deal, where he's had a past experience with Gore, and now Gore's whole mentality, and this isn't a spoiler, but his whole mentality is, I want a universe with no more gods. And that's what he's out to do. And he has a weapon that you find out at the very end is called the Necro Sword, and it is kind of meant to be held by gods.
So I
So
was going to ask you about that.
yeah,
And there's a reason we're probably not going to see that in the MCU. Is that correct?
I think we have seen it in trailers.
You think
I think the
so?
Necro Sword
It's
is a
just
thing.
about whether or not it'll be directly. I think
That's
we've
what I'm referring
definitely
to,
seen.
TJ. Yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing the sword, and it's going to have a
Mhm.
similar use. It's
Mhm.
will it have the same backstory? Because Damon, maybe you can hit us with a bit of the backstory of the Necro Sword, but it may have some ties to Sony and the Venom symbiotes as to potentially
It
why they
does.
may not be able to use it with the exact same backstory as it has in comics.
Yeah, there's a character out there who's the King in Black, the god of the symbiotes, right?
Who
He's the one who
debuted,
ties.
which is potentially why this could. Sorry to cut you off again, Damon. Don't say classic TJ Garrett. Now, this is potentially why I think the Necro Sword could actually still have its proper origin, because to break the suspense a little bit, Null, the king of the symbiotes, debuted in a Thor comic book.
Yeah, so it gets into a gray area because Null and the symbiotes are so heavily linked with Venom, which is very heavily linked with Spider-Man, and now we're getting to a whole rights thing. Can they do that? Can they not? Theoretically they could, because then you're getting into a Kingpin situation like what Daredevil is able to do, even though Kingpin is linked as a Spider-Man villain. He's also very much a Kingpin villain, or sorry, a Daredevil villain. So yeah, theoretically you could really squeak it in there, but I do not want to see a null story if you're not introducing Eddie Brock in there, if you're not doing the King in Black storyline, which is very new. That came out like a year ago, the whole King in Black stuff. It's very
Venom
new. It's
3.
very cool. I think we're well away, long way, long way away from possibly seeing that in like live action. And I don't want to see it
Venom
until,
5.
honestly, for me, I don't want to see it until Sony can kind of get their crap together. All honestly, because I haven't seen a Sony Spider-Man or Sony Marvel movie that I've enjoyed.
Can
I
you
just
imagine the video games we would get? And now this is on my mind because after this, Damon, we're linking up with our friend Matt Aguiar from comicbook.com to play some Avengers, which is a game I don't like. We talked about this on the podcast lots. I don't like it. It kind of sucks. But I'll do anything. I'll play basically any game with some friends, and so especially when it's around
Is that
Marvel stuff.
is that right?
This is this. I spoke, and I'll correct myself to use the same verbiage I use with Ruben off air. I'll play any game I'm good at with friends, even if the quality of the
It's
game
hard
isn't
to
that
be
good.
bad at the
It's got
Avengers game. It's a lot of button mashing.
It's true. Now, to my point, could you imagine? Like, obviously, the rights with the Spider-Man and Venom stuff would be so great if this had happened as well. But could you imagine the video games we would get if Marvel Disney ever bought Sony?
So they can do a lot without that Sony kind of impact. And if you just look at like the Lego Marvel game, that's like a great example, which is actually a really fun time. One of the two games out there I could play Kate Bishop as, thumbs up. So it automatically gets a 5-star review from me.
no bias.
No bias at all.
No bias there.
None. Absolutely none. But yeah, they have a lot of potential. To go back to the comic for a hot second, there's only one way I kind of want to sell this Thor story outside of it being gore. It is very important to the stuff with Jane later on, and we'll get there. But there is a space shark. That's cool.
Space sharks are
Space
cool. Space
sharks.
sharks are
That's
very
in this
cool,
book.
and
I
it's
want to see a
also
space shark in
important
this
to
movie.
note. It's also important to note that Thor and gore rhyme.
And it's going to be in Thor 4.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Myth mark
you heard it
it
here
for me,
first.
everyone. You know what's also
Thor, and
rhyming with
gore all
Thor
rhyme.
is the mighty Thor, and that's Jane Foster's Thor. And that's what we call a segue.
I'm not sure that works, but we're going to just continue on as if it did.
If this isn't the most professional podcast in the industry, I don't know what is. Talk to us about the Mighty Thor, Damon comic.
So, yeah, Jane Foster, as we know, becomes Thor, right? We've seen that in the trailers already, but it didn't really start out until What If number 10, way back long ago. It started out as a concept. It didn't really become a thing until less than 10 years ago, where it really actually became a real thing. It wasn't a what if concept anymore. And again, same guy, Jason Aaron, introduced her in Thor 2014, right? How it kind of happens here, and this is something that will not be happening in the movie, so I'm completely okay with kind of telling the story, is it arrives from the original Sin story arc, in which Nick Fury, who has the powers of the Watcher, it's weird, comics are weird, goes up to Thor, whispers in his ear, and then Thor is no longer worthy. And that's how he loses Mjolnir. He whispered 3 words, and those 3 words was Gore was right. Boom.
Wow.
No longer worthy. So what happens then is there's a Mjolnir on the moon. Thor
We love a
leaves.
Mjolnir on the moon.
There's a Mjolnir on the moon because Watcher in the moon, stuff. So Thor leaves, and next thing we know, there's someone out there as Thor. A lady Thor. Don't know who it is. They don't tell anyone who it is until the last issue of this miniseries. They went through a whole list of candidates. The first person that Thor thought it was his mother, in which Lady Thor at the time, who we know as Jane Foster, but he didn't know it was Jane Foster. He looks at that Thor and says, "Who are you? Are you my mother?" And then she kisses him. And she says, "Do you still think I'm your mother?" And he just replies, "I hope not."
I would have probably as well.
That's a comic.
What else are you supposed to say to that?
They're telling stories. Now imagine you're just reading this and you don't know who Thor is, right? So they do eventually reveal that Jane is Thor at the end. Jane is dying of cancer. And he actually crossed her name off like halfway through the series because he didn't think it was her. Because she was actually out at a medical bay in Asgard trying to be cured of cancer, and to find out that her treatment's she's actually getting worse. And he's like, well, this makes no sense. She was getting better. How is she suddenly getting worse? And everyone's like, I don't know. And it's because when she holds a hammer and becomes Thor, her illness gets worse when she comes back. It essentially takes away all of the chemotherapy that she's received and makes her condition worse, right? So Odin hates this because Odin sucks. Thor finally, after being big sad about everything, because he's like, Mjolnir never did that for me, as he's seeing it fly around everywhere and doing Mjolnir things, and he's getting all
That's
sad.
something I think is going to come in the movie that we've seen touches of in the trailer, as to how Jane wields Mjolnir differently than Thor, because Thor is a warrior. Jane is a scientist. Jane is a genius, and she understands physics and she understands science and wields Mjolnir and uses it to fight much differently than Thor. And I can't wait to see how we get that in the movie. We've already seen the movie do the trailer do the shards that shoot out. I can't wait for the differences she's going to give us in the film.
Mjolnir also just kind of feels like, because it's kind of sentient. It kind of likes Jane more. It called out to her. Mjolnir was the one that was kind of like calling out to Jane to come to the moon. Weird. Comics are weird.
If a hammer tells you to come to the moon, you come to the moon.
Yeah. So essentially, just to kind of like catch you up in comics, right? She eventually dies, but no one ever dies. She comes back to life, and she comes back to life as Valkyrie. And that's kind of where we are now. Now she's actually being re-tempted again by Mephisto to pick up Mjolnir again to kind of re-become Thor.
Mephisto, who of course debuted
Mephisto
in the MCU
is
in
like
WandaVision.
Mephisto is like the next big villain if you're reading Avengers comics. Jason Aaron, still same guy. Yeah, big multiverse Mephisto stories is what they're essentially telling right now. But actually,
Multiverse of
Marvel
Mephisto
Unlimited,
coming 2025.
yeah, Marvel
I'm a
Unlimited
fool
actually
today,
has
I'm
a
sorry.
really good TLDR on Jane Foster. So if you don't want to like read everything, but you kind of like want to catch up and just go right into it, they have a great TLDR in her life. Too long.
And that's, to be honest, one of the things that got me excited to play some Avengers with you and Matt. Is Jane a playable character now, or is she just in the game you can talk to?
She doesn't have a story, but she's a playable character.
And I mean, I understand it's basically just her controls and moves are the exact same as Thor's, just in a different skin. But
yeah,
I'm not here to talk about the disappointment. I've done that far enough with this game. What got me fired up is the line that our guy Task on Twitter put on. He put a video of the other day. I think he still plays this game every now and again. And Cap walks up to Jane and he goes, Jane, I think Thor, I think the other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents around here are afraid of you. And she goes, well, I can't. That was a pretty good Steve, by the way. And she goes, I can't possibly imagine why they would be. And he goes, yeah, well, they kept saying something about you stepping on them. And she goes, oh, Cap, that's not what that means. And that's in this game. And I mean, come on, I'm back.
Yes, it is. You can also pet Lucky. It's a 10 out of 10 game. You can pet Lucky with any character you want. And you have a different
standards are so low.
Damon, here's the problem.
So
Here is the problem.
If you
here's the problem with
game,
what you're saying.
10 out of 10 game. I don't care what the game
If you're playing the Avengers to pet dogs, then I don't know.
Here's the problem, Damon.
It's not
the
just
problem with saying these things is that if we are satisfied with the 97% part of this game that is garbage, we are never going to get an Avengers game that is top tier. And we deserve it. It's time for it. And so,
different game. You're not. This game was designed outside of its story, which I do think its story mode is very good.
Yeah, and I'll agree with that.
I would say it's very
story
good.
Mode is great.
Good story.
Yeah. It's a good story.
Outside of that,
I'll read that in the book.
That's what it always was announced to be. It was a looter shooter. You go around, you get crates, you try to power up your character to the point where you just destroy everything around you. You try to get more powerful than the next person.
Just but that doesn't make it good. Villains and stop making it so glitchy.
The mechanics are horrible. Anyways, this is not a gaming pod. We can move on. Our thoughts on this game are well known, and we should just push on.
The biggest problem with this game is that it should have been great. That's the problem.
The Spider-Man
there are aspects. No, I wasn't. I wanted this game to be essentially Ultimate Alliance, but online. That's what it should have been. Ultimate Alliance is a looter shooter too, with a great story, and you can play all of the characters. You can go up to 4 people, and you can play multiplayer, but not online. And this was essentially that, with a great start to a story that just gave us the same villains over and over and over and over again, same boss battles over and over and over again. And it should have been better. It was so glitchy when it came out. They should have just delayed it another year and worked on it. And
it was designed for next
Square Enix, I'm mad at them because I know what they're... Maybe this is the teacher in me. Sorry to be giving them a parent-teacher interview, but We see what you can do, Square Enix. We played Guardians of the Galaxy. We streamed it on the Agents of Fandom Twitch. That's
Different
Twitch at
company, technically.
Agents of Fandom Live.
That was technically a different company.
Well, they still put it out, and if they're going to put their name on it, I'm going to blast them. And that game was phenomenal. That game was one of the best games I've ever played.
Game, and once when the story is over, the game ends. You want a story mode game, that's fine.
I'm going to once again segue us off of this because we're not a gaming pod and we have Thor stuff to talk about. So, last comments need to be made right now. All right, we're moving on.
No, okay. I was gonna say last comments on just the comics because I'll bring it back to the comics because that's what I'm here for, right? There's a lot of Jane Mighty Thor stuff out right now. You can even find there's like a super omnibus that includes the Jason Aaron Gore run because it essentially sets her up as Thor later on after the original Sin arc. But there's so much stuff out, and her as Valkyrie is great. I really enjoy her as Valkyrie. I kind of hope they go that route later on in the movie if they don't kill her off, because I don't know anything. I'm going into this pretty blind.
I'm ready for Jane and Valkyrie to rule Asgard together.
I would pay money to see that.
Well, you will be paying money.
You might be
to go see the film.
Not to see that. I mean, but we'll see if it's to see that specific. I mean, that's fair. That's a fair point.
You would pay money to play garbage video games, and so would I, because I already did it today. Before we let you get out of here, Damon, we of course have our mutual friend AF joining us to talk some Ms. Marvel, and episode 4 was a lot of fun. It was a blast. We went to Pakistan, and Garrett, we talked about some theories on the pod about maybe getting some of her the rest of her suit, the rest of her outfit while she was there, and we got some taste of that for sure. We got some answers. We're going to dive deeper into this. But my man, Damon, I know you said there's not a lot, but there's there's the touches of some Red Dagger and Ms. Marvel stories out there in comics. And I had a theory, but I want you to tell me why my theory might be a little bit wrong. And so what my theory is because of how already we've seen how good of a fighter our guy Kamran is. And although his mother and the squad seems to be heavily going after Kamala, he seems to be on her side. Now, my theory was that maybe Kamran could end up becoming a Red Dagger. You think that may not be the case? Tell me why.
Well, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. Let's first go back to the Red Dagger himself, right? If you really want to read his story, he makes his first appearance in 2015. This is the second run of Ms. Marvel, number 12. It's almost not identical to the story that we just got in the show, but Kamala goes over to Pakistan, runs into Red Dagger, events occur, they save things together, and she goes back home. He comes back in like number 23. From 23 to 30, he's in the story. That's about as much as you kind of get there. There is a love relationship between the two, the romance relationship, and third wheel Bruno steps in at the very end. It becomes very awkward, and then things just kind of go all over the place.
Classic Bruno.
But to go back to Kamran, because speaking of romances, he was the first one. But you said you think he's going to be a Red Dagger, but you're trying to make him a good guy. But in the books, he's a very bad guy. He was an Inhuman himself. He had glowy powers. He actually just made a reappearance in the books. And Kamal told him to screw off, which was fun.
Which I think they even touched on in episode 3 when she's like, "Why doesn't Kamran have these powers? He's a he's a child of
he
the
literally glows. That's his power. He glows.
And so I think it's interesting that could be maybe brought in future Ms. Marvel.
Yeah, so he's a bad guy. He always knew, not always knew, but he knew Kamala was an Inhuman, tried to essentially bring her to join the evil Inhumans who would call themselves the New Humans. I thought they were going that route with this story. Obviously, they went completely
New Human, clandestine. It's not really that different other than the name.
In the clandestines.
That's what I'm saying. The story is not that different. The name of the group is.
Well, there's a lot of the original arc, the original stories of Kamala Khan have a lot of different tales, right?
Yeah.
That arc really didn't go anywhere. He literally brought her to the prison where they were like, haha, we got you, join us. And then she just escapes. That's about as much as that story gets.
Fair,
and then Kamran
fair.
comes back in that little I think it was a Marvel Voices issue, and be like, I've changed. Here, have this thing, which he tried to kill her with because he's just the worst.
That's fair. That's fair.
Don't
So
trust
maybe
people like him.
Kamran is not the guy I thought he was. All right, it happens. We'll deal with
But it's
it.
okay. They've changed a lot of stuff on the show from the books already. Like I said, we have the clandestines. Shout out to the
That's fair.
7 people in the world who knew who they were.
That sounded like Ruben there was adding in like a little brand
Ooh.
new. That's
No,
something
like,
when I made my
ooh.
ooh noise earlier. I was thinking that shout out to our guys at the Ringerverse. We've had Jomi Deneron and Charles Holmes on our podcast, and that's something they got going. Is anytime somebody starts saying something that they think is a lie, they'll say "Stop the Cap" and they play Cap's theme song over the music and stuff like that. They got some good little bits in there, but like I said, we're going to be having our man AF joining us to talk some Ms. Marvel episode 4. We're going to get his thoughts and we're going to go more in depth on our thoughts as well. Damon, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Of
We'll
course,
play.
and
We'll
we
play some
will
Avengers game now.
we'll play some Avengers game now, and we'll of course be seeing you soon for some She-Hulk, which is just over a month away.
Can't wait. Lots of good stuff.
Lots of good stuff. And of course, we have our man AF joining us today. AF, how are you doing?
Yo, yeah, I'm happy to be here finally after all this time. My name is AF. It's way too long to say my entire name, but yeah, seeing that we're going to be speaking about Miss Marvel today, we can actually get into that about all the uniqueness about brown names and brown culture. I'm quite excited for it.
Yes, us too.
Heck yes, and I mean, we also are firm supporters of 2-letter names on this podcast. TJ AF, it's a good combo. I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
Well, I feel a little bit left out of that one,
And-
but I'll let you guys have it.
Are you sure there's no initial after the G? You can just invent one now if you want
Just
to.
GB. Just GB. There it is.
Great Britain, Garrett Blaney. Sorry, GB was in my head as
The
soon
thing
as
that popped
I...
in your head was Great Britain.
He's actually Captain Britain, like just by the way.
Yeah,
All right.
that's his alias. That's
I'll
his
take
alias.
it.
But AF, it's very exciting to have you. Like you said, we've been trying to make it happen for a long time, and we're finally able to give it a go. Before we talk about episode 4 specifically, what have been your thoughts on Ms. Marvel, and what has this show meant to you personally?
No, look, I love everything about the show. Ever since episode 1, it's just like everything about it is just so relatable to myself as a brown person, and my sister, or my younger sister, who is a subject matter expert on anything Bollywood, and she loves Marvel as well. So this has been like a little bit of slice of heaven for her. It's just like the religion, the culture, everything. It's meant so much. It's like you can relate to every single thing that they're doing in here, and I love it. I can't say enough good things about it, about what I've seen so far.
As people like us who are kind of on the outside looking in, my opinion has been I've learned a lot about the Pakistani culture and and the Muslim religion and so forth. And to me, it seems like a lot of care has been put into it, and a lot of thought about who it's going to affect was taken into that. And so I'm just curious to hear your perspective on that. Is it to me, it seems like it's doing a fantastic job. To you, is it doing as fantastic of a job?
I think with the times that we currently living in, I mean, things evolve over time, and I mean the things that happened probably 20 to 30 years ago, with the way our parents went about doing things is completely different to what we are going about doing things in 2022. So in terms of religion, I mean, we're still upholding everything that we were taught as kids, the upbringing that we've had, and seeing the way it's being portrayed in Miss Marvel. I mean, you had them going to the mosque, doing the prayers. You had them um, doing the Islamic way of getting married, the nikah. You had them hearing the lecture given by Sheikh Abdullah. I mean, those are all things that we can relate to. It's all things that actually happens in our weekly lives. I mean, every Friday it's mosque, so we have to go to mosque every Friday, and it's just like it's so amazing to see it being portrayed, not only in Hollywood but within the Marvel universe. It gives us a sense like, oh, okay, they are actually over there. They actually exist in this universe, and that's so cool.
Wow, yeah, I can't imagine
Very
that.
cool. And something our friend Mo from Streamer, I believe it was Mo that pointed it out as well, that I think is really cool is that people were pointing out that like the dates weren't lining up with the holidays. And then I think it was Mo pointed out, either he found it or it was a link from the writer, and it was, well, no, this actually isn't taking place in 2022. It's like 2024 or 2025. And that is where that's where it's set, so the dates actually do match for that
Yeah,
year, because it's not set here. So they, I think I agree with Garrett, like and UAF, they've clearly gone out of their way to make sure they took care with those, not only with their Marvel Easter eggs, but their cultural like Easter eggs as well, putting that in there, making sure it's placed properly.
yeah, no, definitely 100%. It's not actually something that I was thinking about, the dates. So it was nice that you pointed that out. Probably something that I'll end up taking note of in the remaining episodes.
Awesome.
And so episode 4 took Kamala to Pakistan, and it showed back some flashbacks to partition. What did you think of episode 4 so far, AF? Where does it kind of stack up among the rest of the series for you?
So as a Disney Plus Marvel show goes, I think episode 4 was basically on par with the other episode 4s. I mean, having that cliffhanger at the end, it's kind of like the MO at the moment. Like, let's have the episode 4 that like cliffhangs, and like we'll show the rest afterwards. But I enjoyed, if I'm going to rank the first 4 episodes, I think episode 4 probably my second favorite. Um, I enjoyed them showing everything about Pakistan, walking down the streets, seeing all these shops and getting bamboozled by by the guy charging her 1,500 for a picture. I mean, as a brown person, that's like brown 101. Like, you got to negotiate, you got to barter with him. Like, never ever take it at face value. I said, like, okay, you're charging me 1,500. Okay, cool. I'll give you 1,000. They want to make the sale. They're going to take the lower price. So yeah, I was like, Kamala, you need to learn some more brown things. But yeah, there was a scene on the balcony with her grandmother, and she was having a very very deep conversation with her, and then in volume 12 of her comic, she has this sort of like conversation with herself, where she's in Karachi, but she feels she's too American for Pakistan, but too Pakistani to be in America. So it's kind of a nice sort of call out, if you can put it like that, that they like, okay, like Kamala's actually like fighting this battle within of where does she actually fit in. And I think the very next scene where she meets Kareem's friends, and they aren't as wealthy as her family members. I mean, they're eating biryani out of a packet, out of a bag. But you could see their closeness, and I feel like she loved that aspect, and it's a sort of a nod into her finding some sort of group of friends or some sort of place in Karachi. So I enjoyed that.
And they do a really good job of as well of kind of emphasizing that throughout the episode 2 conversation with Nakia about how she was talking about how ever since she thought putting on the hijab would shut people up, and instead it has kind of, she feels more like herself, but she always feels like she's too white in the brown community, too brown in the white community, and she struggled with it. And you go to episode 4 now that they're in Karachi, and everyone's talking about Kamala's outfit. She wasn't allowed inside the restaurant because of jeans. Kareem's making fun of her New Jersey T-shirt, and so they kind of they mix that in, not even in the direct dialogue, but
Yeah,
throughout, kind of to get us to understand that Kamala's trying to find in the midst of still trying to find herself.
yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the fact that she goes to Pakistan and she eats a pani puri, one of those Indian dishes, and it's too spicy for her. And the first question she asks Kareem's friends as well before she eats the biryani is it spicy? It's like she's Pakistani. She has that. She's brought up with that culture, but you can still see that there's some things that she's a bit too American for as well. So yeah, I love how they just like went along with that, like as the episodes carry on.
I think something that this show does fantastically, and I think it's probably easily my favorite part of the show, is the one-on-one, or the small character moments where there's two or three people in the scene, or just two people, and the writers have done an exceptional job of fleshing out these characters in these one-on-one moments, in these personal moments that really often talk about some hard-hitting subjects in these one-on-one moments. And we typically think we're watching the Marvel Cinematic Universe to see some awesome action, to see some cool fights and whatnot. And the fights are, while very cool, not even close to one of my favorite parts of the season. The character development and the conversations that these characters are having with each other are so important, so beautiful, so heartfelt, that the action is just an added bonus in the show.
That's such a good point too, because I've been catching up on The Flash. I've been watching it on Netflix, and I like it. It's good, but it's nowhere near the same quality in terms of aspects of the writing where you have these conversations, and every time in The Flash there's like 5 or 6 times per episode where it's like, wow, that is a corny line. Like, that is a line that these actors are delivering. They're doing their best to deliver, but like, that is a line. When Kamal is having a conversation with anyone, like, it just seems like a camera on a real
Yeah,
person. Like Aman Vellani, we've talked about this so much, but she's just phenomenal. She is Kamala Khan. And Kamala Khan is that Peter Parker type character. They're 1A and 1B in terms of like being relatable for your average reader, and being funny, and being witty and smart, and somebody that you can really connect with. And they are doing a phenomenal job of that, Garrett. I couldn't
yeah,
agree
no,
more.
Iman is amazing, and I mean she captures everything about being Kamala Khan. I mean, uh, Marvel really just struck gold with casting her. I mean, the fact that like she showed up, and wherever that auntie is that like forwarded that message for the audition, like I think Iman owes her life. I mean, that auntie, like, she knew what she was doing. But yeah, Gary, just getting back to your point about those like deep conversations, and I think that they've made it a huge point during the series. I mean, the conversation between Kamala and her mother in the bathroom when she was bandaging her leg. I mean, telling her about the partition, telling her about how difficult it was for them coming into America, coming into a new country. And I know from like my forefathers as well. My grandparents came from India to South Africa, and they came to come settle over here. And I mean, it's never an easy thing to come to a brand new country. You have to like forge new relationships. You have to basically start from scratch. So that was a nice deep conversation that a lot of brown people could relate to. Not only the people over here, not only the people in America, but like brown people all around the world, because they had to settle in brand new countries all over.
And this is something as well that Anjali Bhamani, Auntie Ruby, talked about in our interview with her. Is it's fantastic because this is a lot of stuff that, as Americans and as Canadians, we wouldn't have learned in school. We wouldn't have heard about. And so this show is giving us an outlet to for the people who want to do their own research and learn more about partition, about history throughout the Middle East. They
Yeah.
can. They can now. Like, this is their outlet to go, oh wow, I didn't know about any of this stuff. I want to learn more. I want to look into it. And I think that's a phenomenal point as well that this show is doing, is it gives us the two lenses of relatability and also a opening to learn more as well. What do you think about the introduction of the Red Daggers in this series? And I want to know from both of you, Garrett and AF, are you Team Kamran or are you Team Kareem?
Oh, definitely Team Kareem. 100%. Like,
Yeah, I'm Team Kareem as well.
As a big Ms. Marvel comic guy, I knew you wouldn't be, you'd be on Damon's side and not be too heavy on
no,
Kamran.
like I think the comics just scarred me when it came to Cameron. It's just like no matter what the show does with him, I'm going to think of him in a certain way, and yeah, I'm gonna keep on thinking of him as the henchman for Lineage, and he's always been a douche in. Can I say that? I don't know.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, so like
Tell it like it is.
I'm not a fan of him. I don't think I'll ever be a fan of him. Feige proved me wrong.
Yeah.
That's something I was talking about with Damon, that I have a theory that maybe they adjust his character and have him end up maybe teaming up with the Red Daggers. They've already shown how good of a fighter he is. He's been defying his mother, but you never know. We could see a heel turn as well, that like maybe if the clandestines are gone after episode 6, he's angry, he's sad, he levels up power wise and becomes an antagonist for Kamala. I could see that. Garrett, what do you think about the introduction of Kareem and the potential future of Kamran?
Well, I think if anything, right, we've seen her have these blossoming relationships with at least 3 people. So one of those dudes got to get jealous about something, right? Someone's becoming a villain. But I do want to say real quick, back when we were talking about Iman Vellani, I thought that there was a hilarious nod in this episode to her being Canadian, and I had to bring it up with TJ on the pod, my Canadian. How did you feel about that joke? Were you pointing at the TV when it happened? Because I know I was like, oh, TJ's loving this.
I did it. I grabbed Ava afterwards too. He goes, "You Americans," and she goes, "How do you know I'm not Canadian?" Which of course is lovely because Iman Vellani herself is Canadian. I thought that was absolutely fantastic because it makes sense. You're not going to get somebody as kind as Iman Vellani and Kamala Khan from New Jersey. You kidding me? They're New Yorkers almost. Not quite. I don't want to upset our New Yorker friends on the pod. I don't want to get Delisa upset at me from our Ticket to Reality podcast, now streaming wherever you get your podcasts. But yeah, you know that Amon's got to be a nice Canadian girl. So yeah,
exactly. I had to bring it up with you, but I am Team Kareem. I enjoyed. I see people have been like, "Oh, Kamala's dumb." She just got hoodwinked by this one group, and now she's just over here trusting another group. Well, I say to those people, you've been 16. You've been 15. You've been in peer pressure. You've been attracted to someone who maybe was not right for you. It happens. It happens. I'm with the Red Daggers. I think they're doing some good. I loved the like almost fleshing out of Shang-Chi that we got and learning about these dimensions and how they're not in another universe. They're on the same Earth, but just different planes and you can't see them. I can't wait to hear more about that. I think there's some big stuff in this episode that has ramifications for the entire MCU. And I'm excited to hear about that. And I feel like that only comes through the Red Daggers because they're the ones privy to that information. So let's go chemo. I'm Big Kareem.
It's interesting that they made them a group though, instead of just concentrating on one Red Dagger, like they do in the comics. So it seems like they're going sort of a League of Assassins type route, with them being like passing the mantle on from one person to the next.
Well, it almost seemed to me like they were like the 2 left, and now that one of them is no longer
Yeah.
with us, spoilers, sorry, then maybe there is now only one Red Dagger, and that's Kareem. But I don't know. We'll have to see how it plays out.
Speak,
Just getting a little more origin of it, and
Yeah.
that could be the future. Is we have one Red Dagger going
yeah.
forward.
Speaking of which, Farhan Akhtar, the guy that played Waleed, he's a very good, very big Bollywood actor. So I mean, the fact that he got to be the first ever Bollywood personality to enter the MCU, that's quite huge, and I feel like that will have a huge domino effect on the Indian market as well.
I hope so.
That's very cool, and he did a
Yeah.
phenomenal
Yeah, I didn't
job.
know that.
What about Kingo and Kingo Senior?
I think that's.
Kidding, of course, because that's
Yeah.
only inside of the MCU and not
But
real
there was
life.
something that Waleed mentioned, and I'm going to take this back to Agents of Shield. If
Heck
We
yes,
love
we
that.
would
Jamie
love it if you
Jirak, if
did.
you are listening, please back me up on this. But he mentioned that if Thor landed in the Himalayas, he would be considered a jinn as well. I zoomed in on that line so much because imagine Jai Ying had found Thor then. He would have been categorized as an inhuman. I'm still holding out fact that Kamala Khan is an inhuman. She is like nobody can tell me otherwise. She's an inhuman. That bracelet that was found, that was on a key. That I'm not going to change my mind. Like Feige, no matter what,
You know what,
I'm
AF?
changing my mind.
I'm so happy you brought that up because a couple weeks ago,
Garrett's about to ask you to replace me as host.
I would never. But while I now have the numbers, the majority, I would like to point out that a couple weeks ago, when they were talking about the Bangle unlocking the powers inside of her, the Bangle doesn't have the powers, she has the powers. I floated it on the podcast that, hey, it doesn't seem like Inhumans are out of the picture, like we previously thought. This path leading forward has the openings for that to be a thing. And TJ and Damon both acted like I was just the dumbest idiot in the world. Like, how could this comic book character who was an Inhuman in the comics have a show where she's an Inhuman? It just doesn't make any sense. They made me feel like an idiot. So I'm so happy that you said that and that we now have the numbers.
It's not that it didn't make sense, just we didn't agree.
Yeah, but you made it seem like it was the most wild theory I could have ever postulated on the podcast when it could happen. It could still happen. So thank you, AF. I really appreciate that.
Anytime.
There's no fun in not doing that.
For me.
Fair. But AF, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you are in South Africa right now, so we gotta let you go because it's a little bit later there than it is here. I think you're 9 hours later than Garrett, so maybe 8 hours later than Garrett. So thank you so much for joining us. Before we let you get out of here, where can the people find you? And I know you got your own kind of pod and YouTube channel as well. So let people know
So
about
you
that.
can find me at afparker642 on all types of social media, Twitter, Instagram. And my sporting podcast is at SportyCast. Just chat footy, cricket, rugby, all types of sports. And on my personal account as well, pop culture and footy.
Amazing.
Heck yeah, so make sure you follow AF. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, TJ_Zorge5, Garrett, Real Slim Blaney on Twitter, The Real Slim Blaney on Instagram, Agents of Fandom on all the socials except Twitter, at Agents Fandom. And check out Ticket to Reality. That's 2, the number. You can find it on Instagram as well as Twitter, a brand new podcast hosted by the Agents of Fandom and Lee Swift from season 2 of The Circle Netflix. We talk reality TV and pop culture. The first 3 episodes are now streaming wherever you get your podcasts, so make sure you check that out as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. That will do it until not even next week, just later this week.
Peace.
You guys.